Welcome back to this conversation about lamenting. And one of the truths that we have all experienced is that we are surrounded in all of this. Injustice is a part of our culture. Injustice is a part of the world. We are fractured more than ever, and how that grieves our hearts. And we talked about how we can't really even imagine how it grieves our Savior's heart, who gave himself for the church. So, we usually think about our reactions to fear, or to fear, to anger, to grief is, fight or flight or freeze or something like that. How do we begin to react and deal with what we're feeling now?
That's a good question.
Well, that's why I'm bishop. I come up with the questions.
Well, we can get mad about it.
That's right. That's right.
Which is all we know how to do it.
It seems like so many, that's the response.
The word has been used a number of times in this entire experience that we've been going through as a culture, and as churches, and as leaders. But it really is a reset opportunity to reset on what's important. We can spend a lot of time doing the analysis of how we got here, what led up to it, and certainly there's value in doing that to a point. But what we really need to get a grip on, okay, what are we going to do?
Right. You can have that phrase, paralysis by analysis.
Yes.
We never get to the...
If this hasn't done it, I don't know what would.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things too, Bruce and Ken, I think, there has to be some admission on our part that we are struggling, whether it's with global injustice or depression locally or whatever. I think similar to the addict, if the addict's not going to admit that they have a problem, they won't get help. They won't be helped. So I, as a pastor, I have to admit that I am grappling with grief. I have to move away from my tendency to isolate and carry this by myself. It is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to rely more fully on God, but also to open up, the heart a little bit and say, yeah, this has been a struggle. How do we move forward, though? And how do we move forward as a community? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And as we deal with the normal stages of grief, you talked about Kubler-Ross earlier.
Yeah.
We all understand that we go through that differently.
Yes.
In different times. Somebody may be depressed when somebody else is moving out of that stage, if you want to, use that. And it's not always linear. Sometimes we go back and forth between some of those things. So how do we navigate that as Christians, as pastors?
I don't think, and you might maybe a contradiction. I don't think we navigate alone. I think even a pastor has to find a safe person, and that's not easily done, I don't believe.
Mm-hmm.
A safe person, though, that truly has the pastor's eternal best interest in mind. I think that's one of the first things after you admit that there's a problem and that I am grappling with something, that's hard to do too. So, but we don't want to do it alone. And when the pastor, like I said, goes into isolation and starts getting cynical, and then going to the church becomes more of a job.
That's a dangerous line that you're crossing.
There's some issues there. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Part of this grief, I think, is getting back. How do I get back? How do I get back? And letting go of that whole idea that I got to get back to where I was, may be the thing that is most difficult to give up.
Yeah.
And yet it might also be, when we do it, the most freeing thing, because getting back goes to some places that maybe we should not have been focusing on as much as we were.
Okay.
And it gives us an opportunity to do something different.
And maybe this is an opportunity for reassessment.
Yes.
Of our ministry, what is essential, what is not essential, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And it all of a sudden becomes a positive way to move forward.
So it is a reset opportunity.
Yeah, right.
To
That's
be,
right.
At the very least.
Yeah.
Mm. Should we be okay with dealing with grief while we're in the midst of ministry?
Should we be okay?
Do we have a choice?
Yeah.
That's probably the better question.
I couldn't put that in words, but that's well said. Yeah. I think we have to be.
Mhm.
And it's not so much about whether we're grieving or not. We're just trying to be faithful in the midst of grief and not let that dictate our actions, you know.
So that becomes the focus then. In the midst of this grief, in the midst of injustice, the hurt, the woundedness, the frustration, all the things that are a part of our lives, but to be faithful even, or maybe I should say especially, then.
Yeah, the whole question of injustice just comes rushing to the forefront, because when we see this as an injustice, then all of the other injustices are brought into the picture to compare and to contrast. But all of a sudden, injustice is at the forefront, whether we intended it to be or not.
Okay. All right. So I guess the word for today is faithfulness.
Stay faithful.
Stay faithful. And then find that safe person or group
Yeah.
that you can share your heart with and that will faithfully minister to you. Because even as a pastor, as an elder, if we aren't talking to pastors, but to others who are leaders in congregations, we all need those people to minister to us even as we minister to others.
And in the meantime, you've readjusted your measures of success. Your measure becomes, am I staying faithful? Are we staying faithful as a congregation? Versus all those quantifiables that we
Right.
talked about prior.
Right. Okay. Great things to think about. We hope you'll think about them until the next segment of this video series. Again, thanks for joining Dr. Ken Miller and Steve Brubaker and me during this time of lamenting.